Hello everyone, I am near the White Mountains in Lincoln, New Hampshire. This is where a very notable UFO sighting and possible abduction took place back in 1961. It is called the Betty and Barney Hill incident. Betty and Barney Hill lived in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Betty was a social worker with a degree from the University of New Hampshire, and Barney was a postal worker. The couple were catapulted into the international spotlight when in September of 1961 they claimed to have been abducted by aliens in the White Mountains in New Hampshire. The two were returning home to Portsmouth from a trip to Montreal, Canada, when as they were driving in the middle of the night, they saw lights approaching from the sky. What followed is said to be the first well-documented, feasibly legitimate UFO abduction in history. It was late at night on September 19th of 1961 when Betty and Barney Hill were driving southbound on Route 3 just past the town of Lancaster, New Hampshire. As they drove, a strange light in the sky appeared. At first it looked like a falling star, but it grew larger and brighter with each mile. Barney, an avid plane watcher and World War II veteran, was sure there was nothing to worry about. It's just a satellite, he assured Betty. It probably went off course. The light seemed to move with the car as Barney steered down the curving mountain road. The light zigged and zagged, ducking past the moon and behind trees and mountain ridges, only to reappear moments later. Sometimes it seemed to move toward them in a game of cat and mouse. It had to be an illusion, they thought. Maybe the car's movement made it seem like the light, too, was moving. Curiosity overcame them. The couple pulled over at road stops and picnic turnouts to get a closer look. Through binoculars, Betty saw that the white light was really an object spinning in the air. Betty told her husband, "If you think that's a satellite or a star, you're being completely ridiculous." He knew she was right. Barney had an IQ of 140. Barney was also a pragmatic man who wouldn't give flying saucers a second thought. The night was too quiet for a helicopter, a commercial plane, or even a military jet with a hotshot pilot. He didn't want to spook Betty, but he was becoming concerned. What was this light and why was it toying with them? The object hovered just above the treetops, approximately 100 feet above them. Barney abruptly stopped the car, keeping the engine running. He shoved the handgun he'd hidden beneath the seat into his pocket and rushed into a dark field, leaving Betty in the car. What he saw was as big as a jet but as round and flat as a pancake. My God, what is this thing? He recalled thinking. This can't be real. Behind rows of windows, gray uniformed beings seemed to look right at him, Barney recalled. He tried to lift his hand to his pistol but somehow couldn't. A voice told him not to put down his binoculars. He had a startling thought. We're about to be captured. Yelling hysterically, he ran back to the car and barreled down the road as Betty tracked the craft, craning her head outside the car window. Without explanation, loud rhythmic beeps sounded from the car's trunk. The couple felt instantly drowsy and lost consciousness. They came to around 2 hours later and 35 miles down the road. They successfully made it back to their home in Portsmouth, but were unable to explain the 2 missing hours. Both Betty and Barney had physical changes from the night before, including Betty's torn and stained dress, Barney's scraped shoe, and a broken binocular strap, but neither of them had any memory of these things ever happening. In the weeks and months after, Betty, an avid reader, checked out books from the library discovering the Civilian UFO Group, National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena. She also reported the sighting to the Air Force, worried about radiation. Here is an image drawn by Betty Hill, depicting an alien spaceship at 200 feet and 100 feet above the Earth's surface. In coming years, with Betty suffering from disturbing dreams and Barney developing an ulcer and anxiety, the couple sought mental help. The two met with Benjamin Simon, a psychiatrist and neurologist who specialized in hypnosis, a mainstream technique at the time. Through months of weekly sessions, Simon helped the couple piece together what they think had happened. A vessel had landed on the Hill's car, putting them to sleep. Afterward, gray beings walked them up a long ramp and into the spacecraft. Once inside, the Hills were separated, taking turns in an examination room that had curved walls and a large light hanging from the ceiling. Each was asked to climb up on a metal table. The table was so short, Barney's legs hung over the side. During the examinations, the beings removed Betty and Barney's clothes, plucked strands of their hair, took clippings of their nails, and scraped their skin. Each sample was placed on a clear material, not unlike a glass slide. Needles connected to long wires probed their heads, arms, legs, and spines. Throughout these examinations, a being Barney and Betty called the Leader watched from the side. After Betty's examination ended, the beings rushed back into her room, excited. They discovered that Barney's teeth could be removed. Betty laughed, explaining that Barney had dentures, a fact of human aging the beings struggled to understand. Later, alone with the Leader, Betty asked where the craft had flown, admitting she knew little of the universe. The being joked with her, saying, "If you don't know where you are, there wouldn't be any point in telling you where I am." Later, under hypnosis, she drew a star map shown to her on the ship. In 1965, the Hill's story was picked up by a Boston newspaper. After that, everything changed. The quiet couple's story became the subject of a best-selling book and a movie starring James Earl Jones. The upstanding civil servants had become celebrity abductees. The Hills weren't the first to spot a UFO or even to report an abduction, but their story did capture the nation's imagination and was so widely publicized it has helped shape how we talk about alien encounters and abductions to this day. Betty Hill, through her experience, became one of the most well-known voices in UFO research. The publicity she received from her abduction made her internationally famous. She continued her research into UFOs for the remainder of her life, even after Barney's sudden death in 1969. Betty passed away in October of 2004 at the age of 85. It's been more than 60 years since that night in September in 1961, but the big question remains: what really happened to Betty and Barney Hill that night in Lincoln, New Hampshire?